Okay, so today we're going to learn how to make tertiary colors. We're going to use color equations to help us learn how to make them. They work like little recipes. And the really cool thing about tertiary colors is that they are always located between the two colors used to make them. So tertiary colors are made from a primary and a secondary. The other cool thing about tertiary colors is that their name actually tells you how to make them. So let's get started. We're going to need your visual journal, and I would suggest that you work on the back of the color wheel page you started the other day. You will also need watercolors. You should have activated your paints, fresh water, and a clean brush. Okay, let's get started. Here we go. We're going to start with yellow orange. So we're going to start with our yellow. We're just going to paint a yellow square. Just like the other day, remember this does not have to be perfect. We're just going to fill that in. Going to rinse our brush out, use a figure 8 in that water, and we're going to paint an orange square. Because yellow orange is made by mixing yellow and orange together, just like the name says. Notice that the primary color comes first in the name, and the secondary color comes second. And that is because the primaries are so important. They make all the other colors, and without them, we can't make the secondaries or the tertiaries. We're always going to put them first. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to use our paint palette. And we are going to start by taking our yellow and putting it in our palette, rinsing our brush, and adding a small amount of orange because we can always add more. Okay, so I always like to start with just a little bit and then add more. So this color should look like a combination of yellow and orange. If it looks too yellow or it looks too orange, then it means you've got to adjust your paints by adding more of one or the other color. So if this looked too yellow, I would add more orange, and if it looked too orange, I would add more yellow. But I'm pretty happy with this color, so I'm going to go ahead and put that on there. You'll notice that that color is different from yellow and orange, so it should never match exactly. So this means that I've done a pretty good job with this color. Okay, let's move on to our next one. We're going to mix red-orange. So we're going to start with an orange square. Rinse our brush. And we're going to add a red square because we're making red-orange. Again, these squares do not have to be perfect, okay? Mine aren't, yours probably won't be either. Okay, so now we're going to make red-orange by mixing those two colors together. So we're going to go in and start with our orange first. I'm going to put it in the side of my palette. And again, I'm going to start with a small amount of red. And I just dried my brush off just a little bit so I'm not getting a really watery color. Okay, so if when I paint this on here, it looks too red or it looks too orange, then I'm going to go back in and adjust my color. So let me see how this is looking. I think that's pretty good. We could maybe use a touch more orange. So I'm going to add just a very small amount of orange to my mixture. And then I'm just going to paint right over top of this again. Okay. I'm going to rinse my brush out. And then as these dry, you're going to go back in and you're going to label them with an S for secondary. Or, oops, that should actually say P for primary. So let me erase that. yellow is a primary color. So I'm not brushing it with my hand, because if I did that, I would smear my paint everywhere. I'm going to write a P for primary, a plus sign between the two, and an equals. We're going to put a T on top for tertiary color, okay? So orange is a secondary color, plus red, which is a primary color, equals a tertiary color. And let's write out what these are. So this is yellow, orange, and this is red orange. Again, I'm always writing the name of the primary color first. Okay, let's move on to our next color. So for our next one, we're going to do red violet. So I'm going to take my red, and as you probably already guessed, you're going to paint a square. Next, I'm going to take my violet. If your color is a little too watery, you can always dry your brush off and then pick up the paint with a drier brush. Okay. So red plus violet is going to equal red violet. So I'm going to add my red to my palette. Notice that I never have my colors touching when I'm mixing them. And now I'm going to add some violet. I'm going to start with just a little bit. And that makes red violet. Okay, I'm going to go back in. Red is a primary color, so I write a letter P plus the secondary color violet equals the color red violet. Okay. Next, I'm going to do blue violet. So I'm going to start with my blue. Rinse my brush using that figure 8 in my water. Add my violet. My brush is a little watery, so I'm just taking off some of that water by rubbing it onto a paper towel. Rinse my brush out. And then I'm going to move over to my palette and I'm going to mix blue violet. So I'm going to start with the blue. Rinse my brush. Add a small amount of violet. I feel like I need a little bit more. Right here. Rinse my brush, put my labels on. So blue is a primary color, so it gets a letter P plus violet, which is a secondary color, equals blue violet, which is a tertiary, and we'll write the name. Blue gonna go back up because I forgot to label my red violet with the letter T. So all the colors we're making today are tertiaries. Okay, so moving on, we're going to do blue-green. And of course, we're gonna set these up the same way we have been. So now we're going to mix those to make our blue-green. I'm going to start with blue and add some green to it. I'm going to find a fresh spot on my palette. If I've run out of room, I'm going to use a paper towel to clean that area up, just with a damp paper towel, not sopping wet, just damp, and you can clean it off and make more room. And again, if the color looks too green, you want to add more blue, and if it looks too blue, you want to add more green. So we have blue, which is a primary, plus green, which is a secondary, equals a tertiary, blue-green. Okay, and our last and final color that we're going to be adding today is yellow-green. Okay, so we're going to make sure our brush is really clean anytime we're going to go into that yellow paint. We're going to start with a yellow square. We're going to rinse our brush. We're going to paint a green square. I'm actually borrowing some of the paint from the green above. There was plenty up there. I'm using it to paint my square down here. So you can see that they look slightly different. It's the exact same color of green, it's just that one had more water. The lighter one had more water and the darker one had less water when it was painted. They are exact same color green from the palette. Okay, so I'm going to use my last spot on my palette, making sure my brush is really, really clean before I go into that yellow. I'm going to start with the yellow. I'm going to add a very small amount of green to start. That was a really, really tiny amount of green on my brush, which was all I needed in order to be able to make my yellow green. You can think of the yellow as being our weakest color on our paint palette, so anytime you're making a tertiary color or a secondary color that uses yellow, you want to start with the yellow first and then add the tiniest amount of the other color to it to build up to the color you need. Okay, so I'm going to finish labeling these. So I have my primary yellow plus my secondary green equals my tertiary yellow green. All right, and there you have it. So this is just a nice little resource for you to have and reference when you go back to finish your color wheel later today or tomorrow. Okay,